Hello everyone, my name is Trevor, I go by TheMrTrails, welcome to the channel. In today's video, we're going to go over a couple more things that Revenant gains some interesting benefits from. Consider dropping a like for me, and if you're new, consider subscribing for more Dauntless content. Revenant is probably the most interesting omnicell thus far, because while its damage output will make it a rather appealing option in certain areas of the meta, but I think it's some of the odd synergies that it has otherwise that makes it even more interesting. The bulk of what is interesting is that defensive build options are able to be turned into offensive benefit. The most obvious of those being tough, giving you an additional 500 HP to give to Revenant, which translates to an additional 24% damage at max and 3500 base damage being dished out by the extra use of the omnicell that this provides. But this isn't the only defensive option that makes the omnicell better. So the life drain effect that you experience from Revenant does not count as damage for Predator, but does count as damage for Rage, meaning you can use the two in tandem. I believe there are other options for damage that still make Rage not as enticing for a build due to only having a 20% damage increase, and it's sort of a mess to try to keep the ideal uptime on Rage. But certainly, if the life drain counts as damage for this context, then there might be other contexts that it is considered damage for as well. So people have been playing around with other things to see how the omnicell behaves with everything, and I think the most common thing I've seen so far is the use of the cell 9 lives. I feel the need to explain what this cell does because it's probably been quite a long time since the more meta side of the community has sniffed in the direction of a lot of defense cells. 9 lives has the effect of giving you a chance to halve the incoming damage you would have received from an attack. This is 12% chance at +3 and 20% chance at +6. It has a bonus effect. At +6 you basically get a free revive your first time down on a new island instance, which, since we're on this topic, this effect should probably get a cooldown given to it, considering the Agarus and Chronivore abilities can be used on every behemoth. But the idea of this cell with Revenant is you'll occasionally have the cost of using Revenant cut in half, meaning you'll be able to have more uses of it, which will lead to more damage from the activation of the omnicell as well as the damage bonus per void orb. This is actually the weakest of the defense cell bonuses, however. 9 lives, halving the damage taken, will save you 250 HP, which in most scenarios will save you 2 extra tendrils, meaning 1400 base damage and an 8% damage bonus, or a 12% damage bonus if the extra activation is directly caused by the reduction in cost. Which sounds pretty nice, however you do have to take into consideration that this is only a percent chance to occur. A 20% chance means that this is only going to happen once every 5 uses of the omnicell on average. And if you have to choose between Tough and 9 lives, Tough is the clear winner of the two, as at +6 you can get a full bonus 5 tendril activation every 2 uses of the omnicell when considering from full HP. For 9 lives to match what Tough does for the omnicell, it would require a 4% chance to occur to have the cost of both activations from full HP, which you would get that 500 extra HP benefit from. And to put it in a different perspective, the average cost reduction that the Revenant omnicell would get from 9 lives is about 10%, or at least it would if that actually worked. Either I'm astronomically unlucky or this just doesn't work. But what if I told you you could scheme together a larger, more consistent cost reduction? Well, it's time for one of the top 2 defensive cells in the game, Parasitic, to make its entrance. But how exactly is Parasitic going to help us here? We can't heal while in the Revenant state, so what is the lifesteal going to do for us? Well, I would say the majority of people running Revenant are defaulting their choice of lantern to be the Skarn lantern, and this makes sense as you need your actual HP as a resource for the damage, but you don't want to be one-shot in the event you do get hit. So we would be using Parasitic for the delayed damage portion of the effect here. The main benefit of this, you might ask, is that Parasitic effectively allows you to use shields as a resource for Revenant. The delayed damage will kick in after using the omnicell ability, and if you have shield, then the shield is what Parasitic will take the delayed damage from. It's not technically a damage reduction, but as far as your actual HP is concerned, it is a damage reduction to that as long as you have the shield. And the devs were asked about whether Parasitic was supposed to be interacting with Revenant, and they did say that this was intentional. At Parasitic 6, you will be able to get 4 activations when at 1100 HP, and these 4 activations being able to spawn 15 tendrils, giving the same 5 bonus tendrils that Tough does. However, you gain an additional benefit of Parasitic over Tough here, and this is an extra Void Orb spawn that Tough doesn't get, because of the extra activation that Parasitic gets over Tough, meaning that you'll be able to get an additional 4% damage to make your theoretical max 76% and 19 stacks of Void Energy. However, with that being the case, I still don't think Parasitic does beat out Tough in most cases. What you have to consider is that the number of tendrils being summoned per set amount of time is actually going down with Parasitic, because you are basically adding an additional 10 seconds to spawning the same number of tendrils that Tough does. The question then lies in, is holding on to the 68% damage bonus after the 3rd activation for an additional 10 seconds worth it, making you run Parasitic, or do you just try to get the next round of tendrils out faster with Tough? And I don't have the exact answer to that at the moment because I think that will end up as a situational outcome, but what I do have an answer for is what if you combine them together? With Parasitic 6 and Tough 6, what this means is 6 activations across the 1600 HP. This gives you 23 tendrils over the course of a minute or so, which is still a slower rate than just Tough, technically. But then again, you do hold on to those damage bonuses for what is a lot longer in this situation. 8 tendrils and 3 more activations over Tough means that you'll get 11 more Void Orbs, being an extra 44% damage bonus when fully maxed out, and an additional 5600 base damage worth of tendrils. However, when you're talking about the damage bonus from Revenant, you do have to consider the net uptime of said damage bonus. And it's kind of a mathematical rabbit hole, so let me spare you the exact details and give you some numbers I ended up with, assuming having each damage percent bonus for a certain amount of time. Ideally, Tough 6 is going to add about 13.5% average damage to the build, along with 3500 base damage of the extra tendrils. Parasitic 6 on top of Tough 6 would give you roughly 27% average damage increase over the Tough 6 version and the 5600 base damage from the tendrils. This combines to 40.5% damage and 9100 base damage from the tendrils at the cost of 12 perk economy. But that's in one cycle of the Revenant state, and that doesn't say anything about the time it is taking. In the same amount of time as the cycle, being about 67 seconds, you would actually lose base damage to a Revenant state cycle with or without Tough. Not to mention that 67 seconds is a rather long fight duration for Dauntless. The main behemoths that would take longer than that would be on the Blazeworks, in Dauntless Trials, or in Heroic Escalation. So is the 27% average damage bonus worth adding Parasitic while losing out on a bit of tendril damage? Is adding Tough or Parasitic even worth doing over a damage increase cell instead? I think the answer to that is it would depend on the amount of time you're fighting things for. If fights are lasting for longer than 45 seconds or so, adding Parasitic might be worth it. If fights are lasting between 35 to 45 seconds, then Parasitic isn't probably worth adding to Tough 6. But if fights are lasting less than 30 seconds for you, then Tough 6 might honestly not even be worth it in the first place. But I will do some more research on the matter and get back to you guys on it. I have to say, I think this is the most enthusiasm I've ever had about defense cells in this game. Like, yeah, Tough and Tenacious was okay, being only 10% damage from Tough, but defensive cells that contribute to offensive production for the omnicell, and 2 of those being potentially even worth putting in the build, is honestly pretty cool. Nothing has been announced as far as the next omnicell just yet, but hopefully it's just as cool and interesting to dive into as Revenant is. Thank you guys for watching. Once again, consider dropping a like for me and subscribing if you are new, and I have been Trevor. I go by the Mr. Trails. I will catch you guys next time.